Welcome back, everybody. This is lesson 3 of building a dynamic website from start to finish. We're going to talk or start from where we left off in the last one, where we kind of discussed where we're headed, and I'm going to dedicate this video to project planning. I know everybody wants to get their kind of hands dirty with code and all that. This is pretty much the last thing we need to do in order to get to that point. And the reason I say that, I mean, we could really jump right in, but if you want to know how to do this for real, whether you're doing this for yourself or if you want to start trying to do this professionally, you really need to know at least the basics of setting up a project and working with UX, UI, documents and things like that, especially if you're going to do it all yourself or work on a team. Either way, this is important to know. We're not going to get really in depth with all this. We can do a series on that alone. That could be pretty massive. We just want to get the core concepts out so that we know what we're doing when we move on to lesson 4. So basically all we're doing here is we're going to make our plan and create a UX document. For those who don't know, if I didn't mention it enough in the last video, UX means user experience. Sometimes it's swappable with UI, user interface. Pretty much the same thing. Ultimately, they're wireframe documents, and this is actually a career in itself. If you want it to be, you can make pretty good money doing user interface documents and things like that for massive projects. For this one, it's going to be pretty simple. I just want to show you the basics, and it's almost going to seem kind of like a duh. Of course I would do that type of thing, but it's important to realize how important this is, especially when working on a major project. So what we're going to do is utilize, as I mentioned in the last video, a little bit of Google's tools that they give you for free. If you do not have a Google account, I'd really suggest that you do get one, even if you don't use it for what we're about to use it for. You can really do what we're about to do with various mediums. This could be whiteboard, which is how I used to do it, or this, or pen and paper for all I care. But having a Google account is free, and you might as well. And if you already have a Gmail account, then you have a Google account, and some people don't realize that. They might have signed up for Gmail, a couple years ago, and maybe they don't even use it. They just did it because someone invited them to it, and they did it. But whatever the case may be, we're going to utilize some of the tools that Google provides. Now, if you don't have a Google account and you do want to follow along, I normally try to go as basic as possible, but I think creating a Gmail account should be pretty self-explanatory. Pretty much just go to gmail.com and go through the motions, go through the steps, and you'll have access to everything that you're seeing here. You'll see this gray bar here at the top. Some of the items may or may not be there depending on what you've added to your account. You'll want to click on, it'll either say Drive or Documents. If you're a new account user, it may say Documents, and when you click on it, it's going to ask you to join Drive, which basically is a free hard drive space, or quote cloud space, within Google's servers that you can store files and create create files and things like that and share them with people, why not? Go ahead and agree to that if you want, and go from there. You also have the option to install it Google Drive for your PC. I believe they have it for Mac too. I'm not sure yet. But this works pretty much just like Dropbox, if you're familiar with that, where you have a folder on your computer that is in sync with your Google Drive. We can get into that some other day, and you can play around with that. But we're just going to use the web browser version here. In the last video, we talked about some of the components that we want in our project. We don't really need to go over those. I do say make a plan, and basically a plan would be writing out kind of your goal, and a quick way to do that here is to go over to create document, and it gives you kind of a Microsoft Word-esque kind of feel here. You can name it, call it project plan. And those who didn't catch that, I just simply clicked up here and it offered me that option to change the title. So and you can kind of fancy it up if you want to. We really don't need to go into detail on this. You know what your goal is. Our goal is to sure that's what we talked about in the last video. If I'm missing something, well, we'll see that later. So this is a simple project plan. Now, if you were to get a project plan from a client, you might actually be lucky to get just this much. Sometimes we actually work out the plan itself with the client. And sometimes they have a multi-page document ready to go, and more times than not, that's phenomenal. That's great. It clearly states what they want and how they want it done. You may need to make some amendments and show them, what you can and can't do, or how to go about certain things, and maybe how to reorder things, stuff like that. But either way, it's great when they have something laid out for you already. But for us, we're making our own site, so you can be as detailed as you want. For this example, this is as far as we're going to go for right now as our project plan. I know this seems pretty lame, but it's a start. So one cool thing about Google is this is already saved, so we don't have to worry about saving it. And we're going to go File and then New, and we're going to make a new drawing. Now, another big reason why I'm using Google's tools is, to be honest, this is not necessarily the tools I would use to make a wireframe document. They just happen to have just enough to do a good example, or do something minimal. They're a great user interface, wireframe, application software, whatever, out there. Adobe's got some now for tablets. Mac has a lot of good software like Omnigraffle. so on and so forth. Do a Google search on it, you'll see a bunch of results there, but you'll get the gist of what we're doing here. Let's go ahead and name this. I give this a version number, not because I plan on having more than one version. Maybe we will, I don't know. But it's something to get used to, especially in the professional world. There is a very good chance you're going to have several of these, anywhere from 1 to 20. It just depends on the client. And with that said, even if you have 20, that doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. That just means that your client is potentially heavily involved and wants to see exactly what they want. And in this stage of the game, you want to know as much of what the client wants now before you start getting into the more dirty work, the heavy lifting. So let's just, I'm just going to get started and give a quick idea of what a user interface document really has to entail at the bare minimum. So I'm going to come up here to shapes, and I'm just going to make a rectangle, and we're going to say, just pop that there, and you can actually put some text in there if you want, if you double click on it. And we're going to say logo here. Alright, and you can probably already see where this is going now. Then maybe we'll make another shape. Kind of goes across here. And we'll call this main navigation. It's supposed to be like kind of our main menu here. This will be how we select pages and, you know, move from place to place. Again, I said this is going to be very simple. We're going to make another box. Kind of spans out here, and we'll call this content area. And then I'm just going to actually drag a copy, which I'm holding down Control and clicking and dragging, and bring this down here and just call this footer. So yeah, this is probably the most basic website you could think of, but it's an example of what a wireframe is. And you might think, man, this is kind of pointless, but you go from taking this version 1, bringing it to the client, and then they decide, well, no, actually we decide we want to have content area here, but yet we want to have kind of a sidebar menu here. And now our document has changed, and had we gone to the client with that first one and they came back with these notes saying, well, everything's great, but we want a sidebar menu here, we would then make a copy of this and call this version number 2. And we keep doing this and doing this until the client is satisfied. And we don't go past this point, or you shouldn't really, unless necessary, until the client is totally satisfied. The reason being is that it's way better to sit here and draw shapes and boxes and such, and work with the client on where things are going to go before you take this into something like Photoshop and actually start making the design, because then at least you've got the basic layout, or arrangement of items figured out, and it takes way less time, way less of the client's budget to sit here and work with wireframes. Depending on how nitpicky the client is, however, I mean, you can work up some pretty good income just working on the wireframes if they do want to go through 20 different versions of it. But that's all up to them. Either way, it's great for us because now we know what we want. I actually do not want this sidebar. I want to bring it back over here and just, we're going to have one main content area. And like I just said, say we would have brought this to the client as version 2 and then they say they changed their mind, we don't want the sidebar. Well, this becomes version 3. And let's say version 3, which I'm just going to go ahead and call it version 3. And let's say they signed off on this. We'll call version 3 final. Now we know we can take this and send it to the graphic designer, send it to the web developers, web designers, whatever. Depends on how many people are on your team, if there is even a team. If you're just doing this for yourself, well, hey, it's just a nice reference to remind you of what you wanted to do. Like I said, if you're doing it for yourself, a lot of times you can just, whiteboard this stuff. But when doing it professionally, this is the better way to go. And even more so, it's even better to have more professional software to do so with, which we may look at here in a second. An important thing to note is that this is, as this is pretty basic, many times with client websites and even your own, you may have more than one view. And I say view, not page. And a lot of times you can get in arguments with folks that aren't web developers when it comes to the term view and page, which view could be swapped out for something else, but a page could actually have several different views from a web developer's point of view. So you would actually, if this layout changes any time at any point throughout the site, then you make another page in the document. Sorry, not another web page, but another page in the document. So there is a page in the document for every single view you can fathom in the website. A lot of the documents I've worked with are anywhere from 10 to 40 pages long, and a lot of times they have annotations over here on the right and references to certain areas with notes saying, the navigation should be 30 pixels high, they want it to be a grayish color, stuff like that. And those notes are probably equally as important for you as they are for the client. So the client sees and knows exactly what they're getting and what they've signed off for. And when you get into this as a business, you can definitely get overwhelmed by what a client can do to you. That's no offense to the clients, but you need to be the one who knows what you're doing and be the professional, and you need to make sure you have everything laid out as clear as possible before you move to the next step. And that's kind of the rule for every step. Once we get past this step, make sure that the design itself, made in Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever, is completely signed off on, and they are totally aware of what they're getting before you move on. Otherwise, you have a lot of headache with contract and money and all that jazz, and hours. So it's just a good thing to keep in mind. And what's great about using Google Docs anyway is that I can simply say share here, and I can add people. So I can add my client to this, and they can be a part of this experience. Not only can they view this document, but Google also lets you work on a document at the same time, which is almost impossible to even show the kind of power of that right now without having somebody else in here. But the client could actually be coming in here while I'm changing this content area. They could be clicking up here and changing the main navigation, and Google will change. See, there's a little blue highlight here. For instance, as an example, if my client was in here, this highlight might be green, or sorry, pink, and that's telling me that the client is working on that area, and basically don't touch it or whatever. At least it's just telling you what's going on. It's pretty cool, and that works for spreadsheets and presentations and everything that Google has to offer. So there's a nice sales pitch for Google there, as if they need it. So whether you're gonna whiteboard this stuff out and doodle it out on a piece of paper or whatever you're gonna do, this is an important part of the process, whether you're doing it for yourself or for a client. Because even for yourself, sometimes working with a blank canvas is just terrifying. And even though this isn't much more of a canvas, it's at least a start. It's giving you a visual representation of what the layout's going to look like, and you can take this into Photoshop or whatever, and kind of go from there. You might change it completely once you get into Photoshop, but at least you have a starting point. You don't have some blank canvas with some guides on it. It's just the way it's supposed to be done. So moving forward, before we wrap this segment up, we'll go ahead and look at a couple of those applications or software that are out there for people. This is Omnigraffle, and I believe it's still only available for Mac and now iPad, which it's a pricey one. I've worked with a lot of people that have used this and love it, especially if you're a Mac person. I have a Mac, but I don't use it unless I have to. So that's just kind of how that goes. But if you're a PC person, Illustrator works just fine. There's also some web apps that you can look for and download. Nothing really. There's nothing really free out there that I found that is worth wasting your time with. I mean, if you're gonna go with free, go with Google. One thing to show you that you may not have, you probably didn't catch on from my Google examples, is that things like Omnigraffle, they come with kind of pre-built pieces and parts. Trying to find some examples here, but basically they let you draw or just kind of drag and drop items like a button or even a browser window, things like that. They make it very, very easy to take items, and rather than just having square boxes, you have something that almost more resembles the actual web element. Be it a menu or a main navigation or a sidebar, footer, or whatever and button or form. They have those tools. I don't see any visual representation here, but take my word for it. Now, another one I've found, me being an Android guy and iPad guy, but is an app for the Android called Adobe Proto, and this one's pretty neat. It doesn't have all the features that something as robust as Omnigraffle has, but it makes it really simple to make a quick web layout with web pieces and parts. In fact, they're showing you here, you can kind of make a scribbly line, and that will tell Adobe Proto that I want to make a little text area here, or a heading or something. I can't remember what the actual gestures are, but so you don't even have to like draw stuff out as much. You just kind of make little gestures, and all of a sudden items appear, and you just kind of move them around, and it's pretty cool. The only other product I'm going to pull out here is part of the Office suite, and that is, let's see if I can find it here. There you go, Microsoft Visio. I haven't tried their newest one, but this one will definitely work if you want the kind of the power of Omnigraffle, and then some, and you're using a PC and don't have access to a Mac, or don't want to have to get a Mac just to use Omnigraffle. This can work too. This works out great. They've got a lot of those pieces and parts. I would venture to say, and I could be wrong, but Microsoft Visio kind of caters more towards the flowchart, data management, things like that, end of things, just business items in general. But they do have options and add-ins for web-related things and user experience stuff. So you can check them out too. By far the least expensive would be Adobe Proto, which is only like $9.99. But I will give you a disclaimer: you do need to have an Android tablet for one, and it needs to have certain specs. So don't get excited and go grab your Android phone and try to download Adobe Proto, because odds are it is not going to work. And it's going to tell you. I mean, you're not going to waste your $10, but just make sure you have that in mind. You're going to want like a 10-inch tablet with a little bit of power, to it. But again, that is an Android app. I don't know if they have that for Mac yet. Or not, sorry, not Mac, but iPad, sorry. But if they don't, I'm sure they will soon. And that concludes this video. Next we get our hands dirty with taking a look at our working environment in Dreamweaver, which people should be familiar with by now. So we're going to skip a little bit of the basics. If you want some of the basics, go to our first tutorial series, which I want to give a disclaimer. This is it's not necessarily even a reboot, as much as it's the next step. I've shown you how to build a website, design it, or take a design and show you how to make pieces and parts from scratch, and then bring it into Dreamweaver. And I might even make a couple kind of appendix-esque videos for that, for some items that I may have left out, it seems. But this series itself is more geared towards making a dynamic website. You can take all these design elements and stuff that we talked about in the first series and apply that to what we learn here. And that is why I've started over, and we're going to make things a little simpler on the design. So, and even, some of the getting to know your environment stuff. But that'll be in the next video. We'll open up Dreamweaver, we'll get our folder structure set up a little bit and talk about that and get into a little bit of coding. So we'll see you then.